Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. Today we're going to take a look at second-year players and what their fantasy outlook for 2025 is. I know it's rookie season. Everyone is focused on this 2025 class, but I want to take a look at sophomore guys who could really make a breakout season or who are going to continue to trend downward. We're just going to objectively take a look, see what the teams did, if they added players at the position, see if they still have faith in their 2024 picks heading into their second seasons. If you like this type of fantasy football content, make sure you smash the subscribe button, and there's plenty more to come as the season ramps up. Without further ado, let's hit straight into it. We're going to start off by looking at those top three quarterbacks from a season ago: Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and they are all going to go into my risers category. All guys, their teams are clearly all behind. Adding weapons for Caleb, adding Burden, Loveland in the draft. Still have DJ Moore and Rome, obviously, so plenty of weapons to choose from for Caleb. Ben Johnson coming over from Detroit. Should be a smash season for him. Jaden Daniels, obviously we saw what he can do last year. I doubt that's even his ceiling, as good as he was. They bring over Debo, obviously, from the 49ers in a trade. Mostly run it back outside of that, but Jaden Daniels is going to have another great season. And then Drake May, another guy who should really slowly start rising up these rankings. Obviously, New England added multiple playmakers in the draft. Henderson at running back, Kyle Williams at receiver. Obviously, they added Stephon Diggs in free agency. So New England is really getting behind their guy. They brought in Vrabel, who's a defensive head coach, but I have no worries about Drake May and his progression for this season. All three of those top guys going into the risers category for me. Next, we have Marvin Harrison Jr., also heading into the risers category. You want to talk about a guy who's getting absolutely no buzz right now after having all of the buzz last season. Obviously, he's a rookie. Obviously, it was an underwhelming season for him. However, they really did not add any pieces. It should be the Marv and Trey McBride show. They added no real weapons in the passing game. Kyler came out and said that his connection with Marv should be much better this season. I really like Marv to take a nice jump up. Who's been really quiet so far this offseason. I'm hoping it remains so I can get Marvin Harrison at a good value. Another guy who's very obviously going over into our risers category, and that is Malik Neighbors. You'll notice a lot of these guys up in the early range are the risers, and it makes sense. You know, their teams put a lot of draft capital clearly into them last season, and they want to see them succeed, and they're trying to prop them up and put them in the best position to do so. And none further than Malik Neighbors, who's going to be the absolute alpha dog. Obvious upgrades at quarterback, whether it's Russ, whether it's Jameis. Jackson Dart probably won't get much burn this season, but between Russ and Jameis, he's going to have a good, healthy target share. There's almost a little part of me who prefers Jameis, just because we know he has that gunslinger mentality, and he would sling, a dozen targets again to Malik Neighbors, no problem. But Malik's clearly in the risers category. They didn't really add many pieces in the passing game. So really like Malik Neighbors this season, as well as Marvin Harrison. A couple of stud young receivers heading into their second season should do excellent. Next, we have quarterback Michael Penix, and I'm also going to put him in the risers category. Obviously, we only had the small sample size last season, but I really think with the pieces they have already, they didn't add too much to the offense. They've got Bijan, Drake London. I think Darnell Mooney's in for a sneaky good season. Penix has the weapons. He just needs to put a full season together as the starter, and I really think he could have a solid 2025. Next up, we have Rome Odunze, and unfortunately, he's going to be the first player to fall into our fallers category. And it's really no knock against Rome. I like him. I liked him as a breakout prospect prior to the draft. But objectively speaking, they added Luther Burden. They added Colston Loveland. That's, 4 mouths to feed. Add Cole Kmet, that's 5. I just don't know if Caleb Williams is going to have enough pass attempts to get everyone involved. I know the target shares are going to have to go to more guys than others. It's not going to be an even split, obviously. But there's no guarantee that Rome is one of those guys. As much as I think he will, I'm trying to take my bias out of it because everything in me says Rome's going to have a boom season for a sophomore campaign. But objectively speaking, that is becoming a very crowded passing attack. So he's going to have to land in my fallers category, even though it hurts me a little bit. And then one guy I wanted to make a note on, J.J. McCarthy. I didn't put him into either category, obviously, because he did not play at all last season. I think any situation where you have Justin Jefferson to throw the ball to and Kevin O'Connell dialing up plays, you're going to be a riser. So if I had to choose, he'd be in that category. But just given the fact that he didn't play last season, we had no idea what to expect. He hasn't played, competitive football in over a year, obviously. I left him off the list. If I had to put him in one, it would be the risers category. Held off on J.J. McCarthy until we kind of see further as the offseason and preseason kind of progresses. But next, we'll hop into the last of the top quarterbacks, and that is Bo Nix. Head into the risers category. Like I said, a lot of these top guys luckily are being treated as so by their teams. They're propping them up. They are putting them in the best position to succeed. And the same can be said for the Broncos with Bo Nix. Obviously, they added second-round running back R.J. Harvey. Obviously, they have the stud Cortland Sutton coming back. Added Evan Ingram, a really reliable tight end target over the middle, who I really like to have a sneaky good season. I think all signs are pointing upwards for Bo Nix. I like that these teams with these top quarterbacks from a year ago are really putting them in a great position to succeed. Next up, we have Brock Bowers, who might be the easiest riser of all time, even coming off the tight end one season. So realistically, he could fall down from the tight end one season, but his situation is incredible. The only weapon they really added is Beck, outside of Genty, of course. But in the passing game, it'll be Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Jack Beck, and that's where that ends. Much better quarterback situation with Geno Smith as the first season in the Raiders, Pete Carroll coming to town. All signs are pointing up for Brock Bowers to continue to dominate. Obviously, the talent is unreal. Yeah, Brock Bowers to the moon still. As we make our way through the first round of last year's draft, we get to Brian Thomas. Add him to the risers list, all right? That risers list is pretty big. A little foreshadow, we will be adding to the fallers list in the later rounds quite a bit. So let's take advantage of these risers while we can. But Brian Thomas obviously showed us what he can do last season. Broke out in year one, which is pretty rare, especially for a guy with other receivers in his class. We expected to do so more than him. They bring in Travis Hunter, who I think will be an excellent complement to him. Travis Hunter's kind of an over-the-middle, make plays happen guy. Brian Thomas can do a little bit of it all, but is great at the deep ball, right? And that's what Trevor Lawrence does so well, is throw the deep ball. So if we can get a full, healthy season out of Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter really should have excellent campaigns and be risers for 2025. Next, we have Xavier Worthy, and I'm actually going to put him in the fallers category. I know this might, come as a surprise to a lot of you. A lot of Xavier Worthy hype coming off of a pretty productive rookie season. But listen, Rashee Rice is coming back healthy. Hollywood Brown should be healthy for the full season. This is most likely Travis Kelce's last campaign. I expect them to kind of force him the ball a little bit more. Maybe I'm looking too much into that. And they also added a rookie, Jalen Royals, in the fourth round, who I really, really like. So it had a clear role for Xavier last season. I expect a much more bolstered room, targets to go a little bit more to everyone. And we've seen when Rashee Rice is on the field, Patrick Mahomes absolutely loves him and treats him as a number one receiver. So this might come as a surprise, but Xavier Worthy will be in my fallers category, although I still think he should have a good, solid, productive season. Again, just like in Rome's situation, objectively, there are a lot of targets to get the ball to. I know they want to get to their young playmaker in Xavier Worthy, but they have other young playmakers with Rashee Rice, Jalen Royals, and those kind of guys. So Worthy's going to land in my fallers category, probably to some surprise. Two more guys from this first round. First off, we have Ricky Pearsall, and he's going to go in my risers category. Now, do I love Ricky P's situation? No, it's not the best by any means, but Debo's gone, obviously. So now we'll see how Ayuk is coming off the ACL. He should be ready to go week one, but even still, Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall should be a number 3 at worst. If Ayuk's unready to go, he'll be the wide receiver 2 there. There are a lot of mouths to feed, but objectively, the situation got a little bit better for Ricky P. Hopefully, there's not so many off-season issues. Obviously, he got hurt in training camp and then bizarrely got shot before the season and during the season. So hopefully all of those circumstances elude Ricky P in his sophomore campaign and he can focus on football. I think he could have a very solid wide receiver 3 role carved out as a San Francisco 49er. And lastly, Xavier Legette. unfortunately, he's going to be the next guy in the fallers category. And to me, this is an obvious one, right? Carolina just drafted Tet McMillan very early in the first round, who has a very similar skill set to Xavier Legette, just arguably a much better player, right? So I think Xavier Legette's really going to take a back seat. I really think they liked what they saw out of undrafted guy Jalen Coker. Obviously, Adam Thielen's hanging around. Bryce Young hasn't shown that he can get the ball to everyone quite yet. And I think Tet McMillan's going to really take that step over Xavier Legette. So unfortunately, Legette is going to be in my fallers category. He had problems with drops last season, which never helps your case. You want to build trust in a young quarterback and a young head coach. And that's just not what he did for most of last season. So unfortunately, he's going to be in my fallers category. Next up, we got a couple of receivers in Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey. They're both going to go into my risers category. One more obvious than the other. McConkey, the number one option in LA. Herbert loves him. Had obvious, rapport and chemistry last season. Performed very well. I think nothing changes for Ladd McConkey. He should absolutely be a wide receiver one, not only for his team but in fantasy. And then a little less obvious one, Keon Coleman. Now, do I think him as a prospect is amazing? No. But Buffalo refuses to add weapons. All right. So Khalil Shakir, obviously their number one guy there. But the number 2 spot is up for grabs. They signed Josh Palmer, but obviously Palmer has never been much. So I really think Keon Coleman, if he puts his mind to it, can become the wide receiver 2 in a Buffalo Bills passing attack that, surprisingly does well every season despite what some would believe is a lack of talent. And any receiver that has Josh Allen throwing them the ball has a good chance to be on our risers candidate. So Keon Coleman, a guy to look out for later in drafts for 2025. Could have a boom season with Josh Allen at the helm. Next on our list, Jalen Polk. And unfortunately, he will be in our fallers category for obvious reasons. All the reasons I mentioned that Drake May should get a boost is the reason Jalen Polk is going to go falling down our rankings. Adding Diggs, adding rookie Kyle Williams. That is one of the most crowded wide receiver rooms in the NFL at the moment, especially of young guys. No one's really proven that they want to go take the number 2 wide receiver role, so Polk theoretically could still do so. But in my opinion, New England going out and getting those guys was kind of an indication that we don't believe Polk is ready for that role yet. Obviously, they got Pop Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, Javon Baker from last season. So this is a very, very crowded wide receiver room in New England. And I think they like their newest additions most, which is typically how it goes in the NFL. So I'm not seeing much of a role for Jalen Polk at this point. Maybe he can turn some heads in offseason and preseason and carve a role for himself. But again, very, very crowded room in New England. Next, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the forgotten guy, Jonathan Brooks. Obviously, he's coming off the ACL. He likely won't play much this season. But this is the one guy I want to give a little bit further projection than just 2025. Obviously, they've got Chuba locked up, signed Rico Dowdle, drafted a running back in the 4th round. So pretty obvious, but things are not looking good for Jonathan Brooks, which is really sad because he was an excellent prospect coming out. Came off the ACL, was obviously trying to, get some of the rust off when he goes down again. Maybe he comes back from this better than ever, and with the second team, he gets another chance. But his time with Carolina Panthers and just his second short season, not looking good for Jonathan Brooks. And you feel bad for the guy, obviously. Another second-year wide receiver that is unfortunately heading to my fallers category, Adonai Mitchell. Another very crowded receiver room on top of a quarterback, if it is Anthony Richardson, who does not throw a great deep ball, which is kind of what Adonai had become for them. And that is behind Alec Pierce, who does a similar skill set. It's just a very crowded receiver room, like I mentioned. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, all guys who seem to get burned over AD Mitchell. Quarterback situation, honestly, you probably want Daniel Jones just from an accuracy standpoint. Mitchell's probably a 4th option in a passing attack that isn't dynamic by any stretch of the imagination. So unfortunately, he's going to land himself in the fallers category as well. Moving on, Ben Sinnott. Some of you might not know him because he is the backup tight end for Washington, but there's 2nd-round draft capital on him. Some people thought he might turn into the guy this season, but not so fast. They bring Zach Ertz right back. Ben Sinnott heading into the fallers category. Obviously, Ertz proved that he is going to dominate the snaps and targets as long as he's there. Showed no signs of slowing down at his old age. In the event that Ertz were to get hurt, which is possible, Sinnott would be a guy to look at, but he didn't prove to carve out any role at all last season. Ben Sinnott is very comfortably going to go into my fallers category. We find ourselves with a trio of second-year running backs coming out of the third round: Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd. All guys who obviously are not the starter for their team, nor are they close to it, but they remained their role as RB2s. Obviously, Lloyd's situation's a little different. He was hurt for much of the rookie season, never had a chance to show what he has. But for Benson and Corum, retained their running back 2 role. No real threats were added in the draft or free agency for these guys. So if James Conner or Kyron Williams were to go down, they should very clearly have that, running back 2 role. And then for Lloyd, we kind of have to see what we got, Being hurt, we weren't able to see if he is the RB2 or not. Now, obviously, there's not much options outside of Josh Jacobs in that running game. So he should get an RB2 role with a little burn here and there. But these are all guys that are going to hop into my risers category, mostly just because they retained their role, right? They didn't elevate it to starting running back status, which is, of course, what we would like to see. However, they're not plummeting down the depth chart, which is what you want to see as a young running back who didn't get, top 2 round draft capital. Next, we have wide receiver Jalen McMillan, who showed a little bit of promise in his rookie season. Unfortunately, he lands in our fallers category. Obviously, Tampa Bay drafted Emeka Egbuka in the first round. Whenever a team adds a first-round wide receiver, not great as the wide receiver 3 on your team. Obviously, the vets in the room, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, this could be, their last seasons in Tampa Bay, depending on contracts, injuries, all of that. But for the 2025 season, McMillan is a faller just because he bumps down to the wide receiver 4 naturally. Also, outside of a high touchdown season last year, he didn't really produce fantastically until guys were out. I think it's very clear he will have the touchdown regression to bring him back down to the mean, which is not good for his fantasy stock in 2025. It's just when you're the wide receiver 4 on a team, young guy, not looking good, at least for this season. Jalen McMillan, unfortunately, on the fallers category. Luke McCaffrey, another guy I wanted to mention. I thought he might build himself a little bit of a role with guys like Zacchaeus leaving in free agency. But with the addition of Deebo Samuel, I can comfortably put him in the fallers category. We didn't see much out of him last season to indicate he was going to barge his way into a wide receiver 2 or 3 role. And with the addition of Deebo, obviously Terry is there and doing his thing. Luke McCaffrey is going to remain in that fallers category for me for this season. Next guy up, Jatavian Sanders, tight end for the Carolina Panthers. And this might be a surprise, but I'm going to put him in the risers category. I think he safely retained his tight end 2 role behind Tommy Tremble. And by no stretch of the imagination is Tommy Tremble some sort of athletic freak. I think Sanders had a little bit of juice at the end of last season, despite the neck injury. I really think he could kind of take over that tight end role for Carolina, be another big target for Bryce Young. Sanders and McMillan will be these taller guys who Bryce can see, get the ball to. I really think Jatavian Sanders can take a jump this year. I might be projecting a little bit on this one when I've been trying to keep it objective. But I think Sanders is just much more talented than Tommy Tremble. And I don't think that's a hot take by any stretch of the imagination. So he's going to be in my risers category. Would not be shocked if he becomes tight end 1 by the end of the year. And now a couple of Broncos receivers, Troy Franklin, Devon Vele. They're going to land in my fallers category. And again, it's just such a crowded wide receiver room. You've got Sutton. You've got the pair of them. You brought over Evan Ingram. You've got a trio of running backs. There's just so many possible weapons that it's hard to project these guys as the ones who are going to boost themselves up past like a Marvin Mims who has plenty of juice that Sean Payton likes to use. So these 2 guys are going to be on my fallers list, mostly just because it's such a crowded receiving room, which is good for Bo Nix though. Next up, we have obvious riser candidate, and that is Theo Johnson, tight end out of the New York Giants. He should be the starting tight end for New York this season. His quarterback play should be much better. And starting off, it'll be Russell Wilson as the starter. New York's made that very, very clear. And we know Russell is a guy who loves to hit the tight end over the middle. For safe, easy throws, just to get kind of ahead of the sticks, I think Theo Johnson could have a big PPR season, or at least an underrated season at that. I think Theo's in a very, very good position, as there's not many weapons outside of Malik Neighbors for that squad. Could have a surprising target share for Theo Johnson this season. Now we've got a pair of fourth-round running backs who are going to slide into my risers category. One more obvious than the other, and that is Bucky Irving and Jalen Wright. Bucky needs no explanation. He is an absolute dog. We saw it in his rookie season. Retained the RB1 role, obviously. Bucky to the moon, all I got to say. As for Jalen Wright, he's another one of those guys who retained his RB2 role, or should. They did draft Ollie Gordon late, but I wouldn't look too much into that. I think Jalen Wright safely has that running back 2 behind Devon Achane. Wright didn't show a ton of juice last season, but with Mostert being out of there, I think he'll get a little bit more of a chance. So a couple of running backs that go into my risers category. As for a couple of tight ends, these guys are going to land in my fallers category, and that is A.J. Barner and Cade Stover. I liked what I saw out of both of these guys last season for what they were, right? And kind of fourth-round tight ends, showed a little juice. Both teams added tight ends or are having guys come back off of injury. For A.J. Barner, the Seahawks added 2 tight ends in the draft. Just not good with Noah Fant there. It's going to be a huge battle for the tight end 1 and 2 position. Definite faller for A.J. Barner. As for Cade Stover, Schultz is still there. Brevin Jordan coming back off of injury. A muddled room. We know Schultz will be the tight end 1, and it's going to be an absolute cluster behind him. So a couple of tight ends that unfortunately are going to fall down the rankings in this 2025 season. Next guy I'd like to talk about, Ray Davis, and he's actually going to land in my fallers category. Probably to some of you guys a surprise, but I think with Buffalo bringing back Ty Johnson, and clearly James Cook is the number 1 there, there's not a clear enough role for Ray Davis. I was hoping he would kind of secure the RB2 role as the bruiser back and kind of maybe get some run, even as James Cook is still there as a change of pace. But Buffalo has shown to love Ty Johnson in the third down role. So I just don't think Ray Davis has a very clear RB2 role even, barring some injury. So Ray Davis is going to land in my fallers category. But for a guy who's definitely in my risers, Isaac Guerendo, I think he absolutely solidifies that RB2 role behind McCaffrey. Obviously, they traded Jordan Mason to the Vikings. They liked what they saw out of Guerendo last season. Let's just hope he can stay healthy as that RB2. And behind McCaffrey, you never know when he's going to get injured. So I like Guerendo as a riser for this season. As for the Jets running backs, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, I'm going to clump them into my fallers category, mostly because of each other, right? Breece Hall is there. He's going to be the number 1 guy. But there's not a clear-cut number 2 running back between these guys. And it makes for a muddled share of the workload, which is not good for fantasy, right? We want clear roles, clear volume, and neither of these guys are seeming to get it. So they're going to go in my fallers category, mostly just because we don't have much clarity on where the depth chart really stands behind Breece Hall. Now, it's not usual that we have a quarterback this late that remains relevant in the second season, but Spencer Rattler is a guy who's going to be in my risers category. Now, I didn't see a ton that I loved last season, but there's no denying he's going to be able to fight for that starting job. Obviously, they brought in Tyler Shaw in the second round of the draft, who we will believe is their kind of guy of the future. But for this 2025 season, Spencer Rattler has a good chance of any to fight for the starting job in New Orleans. Now, it's not that great of a job. There's not a ton of playmakers outside of Olave and Kamara. But hey, we could get a starting quarterback in Spencer Rattler. You can't deny that he is on the rise. We've got 2 more guys. First being Audric Estime. He's going to land in my fallers category, most in part due to the addition of R.J. Harvey. Sean Payton really, really likes R.J. Harvey. He's come out and said it multiple times in different ways. I think R.J. Harvey could legitimately be a 3-down back. And with McLaughlin there to also take some of the third down role, Estime's role is maybe an early down runner. It's just not near big enough to be relevant in fantasy for this season. And the last guy, Tyrone Tracy, is also going to land in my fallers category. And this one hurts me because I was a real Tyrone Tracy truther. At the end of last season, this offseason, I know he had the fumbling issues, and I know he's a 5th-round pick, so, they shouldn't have much stock in him. But I feel he played very, very well and looked very athletic. Obviously, the Giants bring in Cam Scatabo for the draft, a guy who's going to be an early down runner and can play some on 3rd down. I think Tracy's role might get limited to a 3rd down back, which you hate to see. Coming off last season, you thought he might just be the guy. The Giants might just make him a workhorse moving forward. But with the addition of Scatabo, obviously the veteran Devin Singletary still running around that building somewhere. Unfortunately, Tyrone Tracy is going to land in the fallers category. And that is all of the 2nd-year players we are going to run through. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. I know there's been so much chatter about this year's rookies, but I wanted to take a look at last year's guys and see who has been put in a prime position by their teams to either have a fantastic fantasy season or to get caught down on the depth chart. If you like today's video, make sure you smash that like button. Comment down a player that you agree with me on or disagree. I would love to hear your guys' opinions down in the comments. Again, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.